We've got Devin Miller from Miller IP Law joining us on the CEO briefing tonight. Devin, it's such a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, this, the CEO briefing that I do last week was number 223, basically since Zoom took over during COVID. So we've had a great run, and mostly it's to brief our shareholders on what's happening in the world of water, but also wider in terms of topics like things like inflation, things like global trends, like the deglobalization trend that's going on and so forth. Your particular focus, obviously, is on IP law, and you're very active in that area, and you've got a following. And so I'd like our shareholders to hear more about you and what gets you up in the morning, what excites you.
Yeah, that's probably a long and sordid tale, but I'll try and give the reasonable version of it. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I do a lot of things, but at least the day in and day out, it'd be intellectual property. So I've an intellectual property attorney for coming up on 11 years, started my own firm, Miller IP Law, about 4 years ago. But I also equally enjoy and love doing startups and small businesses. So alongside the law firm, I've also done everything from a food truck with the kids. I've done a lead generation platform tool, done a wearables company and several other things. And so for me, on both sides of it, what gets me up in the morning is one, the alarm clock. But then once I get up with the alarm clock, it's really the enjoyment of working with a lot of different startups and small businesses, as well as be able to do several startups on my own and be able to kind of captain that ship. And between both of it keeps life interesting and pretty exciting.
Well, one of my passions is personally is disruption and how disruption works. I was a disruptive marketer during the .com, somehow ended up in water, which is another long and sordid story, which we'll explore on the podcast you're so kindly guesting me on. But I'm interested in is how you use your IP law, really, that's your platform, as a way to kind of coalesce or have synergies with these startups. I mean, is that where you come in on these things?
I think the thing that I enjoy is, you can find a lot of great attorneys that know the law very well. It can counsel you and give you direction on that. What tends to be lacking with a lot of attorneys is the ability to also infuse in the business side and the guidance and what makes sense from a business perspective, not just a legal perspective, because those answers aren't always the same.
On the IP front, I recently saw there's a whole thing going on in Amazon and Goodreads regarding books. And what's happening is that you have, let's say, a well-known author will have a bunch of copycat books. They're on a variety of topics, how to raise salary better, but it uses the author's name to try and sort of, and then the authors are having a hard time getting these removed from Goodreads and Amazon. And one author said that Amazon said, well, show me the registered trademark for your book. I'm like, whoa. That is so unusual, and it makes me think that and I also know that USPTO has become much more demanding on trademarks, like show actual use, versus just throw it on a website kind of thing. So, where do you think the trademark wars are going? Is it going in this sort of very literal direction where we have to do all this?
If you have a trademark and you can do it to a lesser degree with copyrights and patents, then you get additional benefits and ability to control your brand and some of your store and that on Amazon. And so that's kind of where their knee jerk, and it is kind of a bit funny because generally you can't get a trademark on a book or on a book title.
That's the whole point.
The exception is you can get it if it's on a series. And so if you're to do a Harry Potter series or Lord of the Rings or Jack Ryan, or pick your genre, if it is a book or a series of books with the same overarching name, then you can get it. So there are exceptions to that. But generally, I think that trademarks, it's kind of with a lot of intellectual property, it ebbs and flows. And so you'll get a swing with the office that they are very aggressive and take a very tight stance. And probably with trademarks right now, we are seeing more things pop up with examiners being overly aggressive with proving that you're using it in commerce. In other words, there's a reasonable amount. You do have to show you're actually using the trademark in order to own it. It's evolved a lot. It's probably from a lack of people are so used to everybody having an online presence and everybody doing everything online that's where it's been a little bit impactful on the trademark side.
Do you think trademarks are effective?
I'll turn the question around. Do you think that Nike, Pepsi, Disney, M&M's, Apple, Samsung, do all those names have value?
Well, they aggressively support their brand in addition to the trademark strategy, right? So
Yeah.
they're doing a lot, to support it. And I would argue that in a vacuum, Nike's trademark would be meaningless without all that commercial.
No, I did definitely. I mean, just simply going out and getting a registered trademark and doing nothing else with the business. I would say that's the case with anything. You could have a great product that's amazing. And yet if you can't go out and sell it, or you can't go out and find customers, great product isn't going to make a big or great business. A trademark by itself isn't going to make a great business. And so, but on the other hand, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. So in other words, if you're to take Disney, we'll just say that as an example without getting into all their political stuff or anything of that nature. Right. But, Disney has a brand that they built over the course of a long period of time, has a great name recognition. People know what it is, that they have their parks, their theme parks, they have the movies, and now what they did to build that, a lot of brand or establishing the brand, marketing, sales, commercials and everything else. But the way that they capture a lot of that value so that they can control it is still by trademark. So in other words, if you want to go and license something, if you want to get a license from Disney, if they'll give you one, is going to be licensing the trademark. Disney is still very aggressive because they put in all of that value. Now they want to be able to control it so that people don't go start calling everything Disney, leveraging all the time, money, and effort they put into their brand, and yet not having to invest in them. The other companies not invested themselves. So I think trademarks can be valuable, but you do have to do the additional business work to build a business around it, to establish a brand so that the trademark then reflects some of that value and captures it.
Yeah, well, of course, perhaps the preeminent branding boss at this time who does not advertise at all is, of course, Elon Musk. Interestingly enough, Elon Musk is not a trademark term, right? But same as if I go out there and start branding myself, build my personal brand, I'm not trademarked. I know that
I'll give Elon Musk is probably the exception. He gets into I don't know that he has a trademark. I would guess he probably doesn't. He could probably get a trademark if he wanted. If your name rises to the level that everybody associates a given name with a given individual. So when you think of Michael Jordan, everybody always thought of the basketball player. But now, to your point, for 99.9% of people, your name never gets to that level and you're not able to do it. So Elon Musk, I would counter with, I think he does a lot of things to market his name or to keep himself out there. He just doesn't have to do it via paid advertising or a lot of that. He does it via different avenues.
Yeah. And I just literally checked the electronic search system, and sure enough, there's no Elon Musk trademark. It's interesting. No, it's just it's something that came up for me. I had really never thought it through, actually, the potential trademarking of a personality, because those are so powerful these days. But anyway, that's interesting side note. I wanted to ask you, Devin, you have a very active podcasting career. You do a lot of that. Do you pair that with things like speaking engagements or authorship, or how do you sort of build intellectual stuff around that?
So a lot of times I look at it as the broader podcast, books, speaking engagements are a way for me to then make connections and network with people to then turn it into that one-on-one conversation.
What would you say the primary benefit of podcasting is for you?
I really set it up when I started out. It was giving back to the clients that we already had. And so it's called the inventive journey, but really it tells the journey of how people get to where they're at today. But now what is also beneficial is because I'm sharing a lot of startups and small business stories, and that's who our clientele is, I make a lot of good connections. And it's whether it's a guest on the podcast, whether it's somebody they know. So it's a great way to connect within the audiences and the people in the different realms that I have clients with, but it's in a much more natural way. It's not so invasive. It's not the cold email or cold outreach that I'm just blasting everybody and hoping I get a small portion. And so they get value, they get exposure, and then it gives me increases my network.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to talk about something really, really important. You're based in Ogden, Utah. And I also see that you run 7 to 9 miles a day, which is freaking amazing. And how does that tie in with the Forrest Gump tag?
It's just Forrest Gump. It happens to be my favorite movie. And so I put it in there. But yeah, I love running. I think ran pretty consistently 7 to 9 miles. Almost. I don't run on Sundays. I always take Sundays off, but every other day, probably now for 10, 15 years. And half the time is where I have my greatest ideas because my mind starts to wander. It lets it unwind. And then it allows me to kind of recharge before I jump back into the day.
The connection for me, of course, is that I'm a beyond avid skier. I've in fact, at one point at the age of 40, I interrupted my entire career to go ski bum in Colorado. And people were looking at me like I was insane, but I'm so happy I did it because, you got to get outside of the loop, as you know. And I dearly love Powder Mountain up in Eden. What an amazing resort. Do you do any skiing or boarding yourself?
I get asked that all the time. I don't. I usually, if I'm doing something, I'm on a snowmobile. So I like to go fast and go up in the mountains and that. So
hey, that's
if I do it, that's usually where I'm at.
So that's super challenging. I mean, you can get yourself quickly in deep trouble in a snowmobile.
I try and stay out of trouble, but I try and have a fun time or staying out of trouble.
I agree that in order for us all to kind of just stay sane and so forth, we've got to have these extroverting passions, these activities. It sounds like running is not so much a passion as something you've developed into a routine, but nonetheless, I think it's extroverting for you, right? It gets you off your current topic of the day. And I agree. I mean, for me, the skiing has been, look, I'm no spring chicken. And after a while, like, well, why the heck am I skiing? It's not just to go up the lift and back down again. So my wife has a school and I take the school kids up skiing every year, and which is a whole production coming from Florida. And but that gives it meaning. And I'll just kind of become a ski teacher for a week. And that changed. I think it changes everything. I listen to Joe Rogan a lot. And one thing about Joe Rogan is that he's got extraordinarily diverse interests, right? He's just curious about so many things. And he's not doctrinaire either. He's obviously got a career that he pursues and does well, but then he almost seems to relax in his podcast. He almost just like hang out and just chat with you for 3 hours. I have to say I admire that tremendously. Do you ever see yourself doing a longer form than what you do currently in terms of podcasts?
We actually, or the podcast is a series of podcasts, and it's set up so you can follow the guest along their journey and hear different aspects of it. But the original one that started out was the inventive journey, and I think we're now at over 500 episodes. But when we first started out, we tinkered around with anything from 10 or 15 minutes up to, I think, almost an hour, at least 45 minutes, if not an hour. And it felt like if it was 10 or 15 minutes, it was too short to really give their journey justice and to capture it. And yet if we went on to 45 to 60 minutes, it was just kind of dragging on, and it wasn't really keeping a good pace, and people were losing interest. And so at least for me, probably my attention span works well with the 30 minutes ish, tends to resonate well for me.
I think that Joe Rogan is atypical. I mean, I think he just settles in and you just kind of in the warm bath. And, I have a long commute to my workout because I insist on doing this. I do this bar method thing, which is a ballet bar workout, right? Which I'm the only guy in the room, which is fun in its own way, but it's far. And so this is perfect for me to just listen to Joe Rogan. If somebody calls while I'm listening to it, it's fine. But I think he occupies a unique, I don't think it's easy to replicate what he does. It's a very special thing.
No, I think so. And he's found a great niche of just kind of allowing people to tune in, listen, or do the conversation. And then when they don't have the time, they just can tune back out. So I like it, but I don't think I could replicate it.
One last question, Devin. Where do you see yourself 20 years from now in terms of accomplishments, where you're at? Kind of draw an idea of where you think you're going on a longer time span.
If you would have said 25 years, I'd hope I'm retired and just enjoying life. But I don't know if I'll ever actually retire. But
no, who does anymore?
Yeah, I would like to get to a point, and then I'll answer your question, where I would say retirement for me is I don't have to work if I don't want to. And so in other
Right.
words, it now becomes optional, where that's kind of where I'd love to be. You know, where am I going to be or the next 20 years? Oh, that's so hard. I will probably or continue on with the law. I love it and enjoy it. And that's kind of always been my mainstay. And then I'll probably have another five different startups that I've been involved with or started and they're doing in various things, because for me, it's a fun of, I like to do the law. It provides a good income, good living. And I also love startups and small businesses. And if there's something that catches my fancy that I think that I can do well or do differently and that I can make money at, then I tend to do it. I find it enjoyable. And even if I don't always hit a home run on it, I enjoy doing it. And so probably I'll continue on the law, continue to grow the law firm, continue to help startups and small businesses, and then do as many fun startups as I can myself.
Yeah. Okay. So, in one way, we measure the worth of our life in terms of what people got out of it. You know, like if I take again the Elon Musk example, he started the whole EV trend. He's pioneering space. He's doing a million things, and so I think that he would measure him. If he ever does, I don't think he cares. But if he ever measured himself, it would be based on the impact he made. And I guess this is your track. This is what turns you on every day, is to help these ventures along and to be kind of a foster parent to them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if I were to measure it, two things. One is, and we haven't touched on it much, our big priority in my life is my wife and kids. And if I had nothing else that I accomplished in life, but I was a great father and a great husband, that would be more than sufficient for me. And I feel like I'd lived a great life. And then on top of that, on the business side, if I can be impactful, helping startups and small businesses, solving problems, and then just enjoying life and having fun along the way, that would really be the life that I'd seek to accomplish.
Sounds like you're doing it. And I totally agree that at the end of the day, creating the next generation is the name of the game. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely.
Devin, it's been such a pleasure spending a few minutes with you. I appreciate the time you've given me. Really interesting. I look forward to our talk in a few days. Other than that, I wish you a wonderful weekend with your family, and lots of success and prosperity with your mission.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on. It was a fun conversation and definitely enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir.